Starting off with the most basic of clears, the full clear. Every full clear involves starting on a buff, whether it be the red buff or the blue buff. You kill all 3 camps on one side, and then you move on to the other side to finish your clear. In total it's 6 camps, and you'll be level 4 with around 800 gold depending on when you finish the clear. If you did it efficiently, then you'll have time to either gank or go straight to the scuttle, ideally with one smite available so you can kill it quickly. You're typically not going to have time for both though, because you need to get back to your camps as soon as they're spawning. One of the variations that can occur on a full clear is if you're starting blue side. When you do your blue side, you're going to do blue, gromp, wolves every time. There's no change on that. However, when you get to your red side, some people will do raptors, red, krugs, and other people would do raptors, krugs, red. The benefit of this is that if you do raptors, krugs, red, the respawns are going to be synced between your raptors and krugs, because they have a 2-minute and 15-second respawn timer. However, the buffs have a 5-minute respawn timer. So if you're clearing efficiently, you'll notice the difference on your second clear. However, the reason that some people still do raptors, red, krugs is because it's more efficient. You're going to finish the clear faster. So depending on how fast your clear speed is, or how quickly you want to be getting to a gank, you could decide one option over the other. If you're very new to jungling, always go with the raptors, red, krugs until you get more confident in your clear speed, and then maybe you can experiment with it later. The 8 camp involves more farming than the regular full clear. You're going to start on either your raptors or your wolves. If you start raptors, you'll do raptors, krugs, red, and then proceed to your blue side of the jungle where you do wolves, gromp, blue. Or if you start wolves, then you'll do wolves, gromp, blue, hit the blast cone, go over to your red side, do raptors, red, krugs, or as I said before in the full clear, you have the option of doing raptors, krugs, red if your clear is fast enough. Either way, the important thing to understand about these paths is that when you do finish your 6 camps, you're going to go do scuttle or gank, whatever you want to do in that brief window, and then you want to go right back to whatever camp you started with, because they're going to be respawning earlier than they would be with a full clear because you did them as the first camp. If you're not efficient about this, the enemy jungler can take your raptors or wolves depending on whatever you started. And of course, if you're not doing an 8 camp but you know that your opponent is, you can use this to your advantage and try to punish them if they get greedy. The primary benefit of this clear is that instead of the 900 gold that you'd have after a full clear plus scuttle, you'll end up having around 1,200. For some champions, this can be very beneficial because you can get items that you normally wouldn't get from a full clear. A full clear restricts you to items like Balmy Cinder, Faded Ashes, anything that's 900 or lower. But with an 8 camp, you then have the option of going Needlessly Large Rod, Sorcerer's Shoes, Blasting Wand plus Dark Seal. There's a lot of different options that you can experiment with. So if you're the type of champion that really wants that extra gold, it may be worth experimenting with as long as you understand the risks. You do need to be getting back to those camps as quickly as possible, so you have less time to gank unless it's very, very quick and convenient. The 10 camp clear is very rare, and the reason is because it's even greedier than an 8 camp clear. You're doing all the same things that you would with an 8 camp, like starting your raptors or your wolves, but the difference is instead of recalling after you've finished your wolves and gromp, or raptors and krugs, whatever you decided to start off first, you'll end up continuing the clear to get all 10 camps after your other 2 camps spawn. The reason this is so risky is because that's a very long time that you're going to be unwilling to gank your teammates because you have to get to your camps on spawn. You're also not going to be recalling, so if any kind of fight occurs, you're not going to have items yet. You would only do this in games where you think that it's very, very unlikely for any kind of fight to occur and you're just trying to maximize efficiency. As I said, very rare clear. A 3 camp recall is going to be for champions that have very, very fast clears. So anything like a Kayn, a Karthus, if you're insanely good at clearing on that champion, it becomes an option because you can do 3 camps, reset, and still finish your clear on time for scuttle. But again, that's only going to be for advanced players that are very, very good at their clear on specific champions. The benefit of this is that you're going to be stronger in any kind of fight that occurs because you've got that little bit of an item purchase going on, whether it be a long sword or a dark seal. Now let's talk about paths that are designed for early ganking. Level 2 ganks, you're pretty much only going to see on champions that like to cheese early on. Something like a Shaco, maybe a Jarvan will do it. It's a pretty rare thing, but some champions can do it. If you're going to implement this strategy, you want to start on red buff, and ideally red buff is on bot side of the map. If you're playing on red side, it's pretty hard to do, but you can make it work top lane. It's just not as good. If you're going to go for a level 2 gank, you need to keep some things in mind. It's very, very important that you start red buff because you need the extra damage and slow for the gank to work. And whatever lane you're playing for, you need them to be fighting a lot. So most of the time, this is going to be easier to do in bot lane if there's a bunch of ranged champions that are constantly fighting. Or in top lane if there are some champions that really want to fist fight, like maybe a Fiora and Irelia, those kind of champions. But if you've got 2 tanks in the top lane and you try to pull off this gank, it's very unlikely to work, and even if you do, it's probably not going to be that valuable of a gank. And that gank needs to be very, very valuable because the enemy jungler sees you on the map and can go counter jungle you, so you need to make sure it's worth it. The level 3 gank isn't as early as the level 2 gank because you're doing 3 camps. However, the benefit of it is it's not nearly as risky if you fail. Typically, how it's going to be done is you start a buff and then you do this 2 side camps. There are multiple variations that you can do it though. You can do red Raptors Krugs or red Krugs Raptors, depending on where you're wanting to path. Of course, the same thing applies for blue buff. If you're wanting to gank the side lane, then you do red Raptors Krugs because you're going to be right next to whatever you want to gank. If you're wanting to gank on the other side of the map or in mid lane, then you'll probably want to clear last whatever camp is closest to mid lane so that way you don't have to walk as far. In the example that's showing on the screen, I'm playing Maokai and I'm waiting for the Swain to walk up just a little bit so I can force the gank with my Zed. Maokai is the type of champion that's a really good candidate for a level 3 gank because of how much CC and mobility he has. As long as your teammate has enough damage to back you up, then it can work out great. If you see the enemy jungler do a level 3 gank and fail it, that's a great time to go punish them. You can go into the other side of their jungle and start counter jungling, get a ward, maybe even look for a pick on them. There are many consequences that you can punish if they screw it up, just like with the level 2 gank. The last segment of this video is going to be on invades. Starting off with the 1 camp invade, this is almost always going to be done on red buff. Similar to what I talked about before with the ganking, it's very important to have red buff because you intend to be fighting in this invade. You also need to know where the enemy jungler is starting for this clear to work because your goal is to kill them on their gromp. If you're both starting on the same buff, it's not going to work. In the ideal scenario, you start either red or Raptors depending on which your champion clears the fastest. Most of the time, Raptors is going to be ideal because it gets you closer to the enemy jungle. And if you have the right champion, it can clear it fast enough to where you don't have to smite. Then you'll walk over to the enemy jungle that's finished their blue buff and they're ready to do the gromp. As they're about to finish the gromp, you sneak in, smite it, and look to kill them. Even if you don't kill them, as long as you force them out of the jungle, that can still be beneficial. But if they end up getting the gromp, then you've wasted a lot of time and it feels really bad. Like I said before, if you don't know where they started and they start the other side from what you're expecting, you're going to go in, maybe take a camp or 2, but it's not going to feel very efficient. Now you've cleared 3 camps that would have taken you the time to clear 4 if you'd done a regular full clear. And if the enemy jungler sees you in any part of this process, they can go to your blue side and take your camps, which would feel really bad as well, because they'll get all 6 camps, whereas you're in kind of a wishy-washy area going back and forth between jungles. An important thing to consider if you're doing the red version of the 1 camp invade, you need to be playing a champion that can hop over a wall, whether it be Kindred, Graves, anything like that that has a way to get over, then it's going to work a lot better than a champion that has to go around the wall. It's going to take way too long. And no, don't use your flash. The 2 camp invade is another uncommon type of invade, but some people like to use it. With this invade, you're typically going to be doing red buff into Krugs. After this, you go into the enemy gromp. Unlike the 1 camp invade, you want them to be on the other side of the map. So that way, when you do red and Krugs, you can go into their gromp and everything's still going to be up. And you're looking to get a pick on them after they finish their wolves. Make sure you're playing a very strong early game jungle that's going to be able to win that 1v1. And keep out for people that might try to rotate if you get seen. For our last clear, the most common type of invade, the 3 camp. This is where you do all camps on one side of the map, and then you invade them. You have the option of either going to bot side or top side because you've already cleared 3 camps and you're just looking to kill them on the next buff that they go to. So let's say they started red side, then you'd run to their blue side and try to kill them on their blue, or vice versa. If they started blue, you're trying to kill them on their red buff. If your champion is significantly faster at clearing, then maybe you could get away with killing 4 of your camps, but most of the time you can only do 3 by the time they get to the other buff, because you have to consider the travel time to get over to their jungle. As with the other invades, it's very important that you stay in Fog of War, waiting until the enemy jungler shows up, and then pulling the trigger immediately so that you can kill them and get out quickly. Unless the enemy laners aren't rotating, then you can continue to clear whatever camps are remaining after killing the enemy jungler. Once you're done, you can reset and go to the other side of your jungle that you haven't cleared yet. If you're playing against a 3 camp invade, there are multiple ways to counter this. One is going to be good early warding, but alternatively, you can be careful when you're walking near your buff. If you notice them, immediately back out, and even if they get your buff, it's not that big of a deal because of how inefficient their path is having to walk from their jungle to yours. You can use this as an opportunity to go get a gank while they're clearing your camps, or maybe counter jungle them as well if you want to be sneaky about it.